are here for our special meeting agenda with solid waste. It is April 5th, 2022, and the time is
11:02 a.m. Sorry about that. All right, so in attendance are Commissioners Brooks and Duncan. Are there any changes to the agenda? None? All right, looks like we have several discussion items, and we'll start with number one, which is the 2022 construction projects.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. My name is John Phillips for the record. So as far as construction projects go for 2022, the Solid Waste Department is currently working on the Z-Wall project at the Ramsey Transfer Station. These are those recycling walls that we're putting in to free up other areas for garbage to help get to process more people through the transfer station quicker is the ultimate goal. TML Construction is the contractor. They're ahead of schedule on this project and they are proceeding nicely. The walls are completely formed and have been poured. We're currently working on backfilling. Final completion appears to be likely before the end of May. There's still some compaction work necessary and some asphalt, some paving, things like that. So, but it's looking like it should finish up ahead of schedule. The Athol rural site is the next component I'd like to talk about. So we've been evaluating that site for potential future expansion within the property that we already own. The Solid Waste Department has been working with JUB Engineering on this to look for ways to improve efficiencies on the site and other ways to improve the function of the site to take other items. We're trying to incorporate Z-walls for metal specifically and larger, bulkier items so people wouldn't have to come to the transfer stations to get rid of things like refrigerators or stoves, things like that, or possibly minor amounts of construction debris from their house. We recently found out that Howard Road is going to be realigned, and so we're going to have to work with the highway department to see how that may impact our site. We were asking for the potential to maybe move our entrance or change the entrance and the exit to maybe have an entrance and an exit. It didn't sound possible based on this subdivision that's planned in the area. So we're going to work on that, and I'll keep you posted. The Ramsey Transfer Station, I'll move on to that. So site improvements, we're working with Jacobs Engineering to currently put together a scope of services to include ways to improve efficiencies also at the Ramsey Transfer Station, specifically for handling the increased customer counts and the tonnage that's coming through the facility. Preliminary work will be looking at how we might be able to get vehicles and smaller loads on and off the site without having to go through the scale house. So it's possible we may be able to bring cars in and let them self-unload if it's bagged garbage or smaller items in a separate area, and then they would be able to go right back to Ramsey Road without actually going through the site. So we're hoping that would streamline the process and just overall have less vehicles traveling completely through the site.
Right. On that, how often do you actually get a car that's weighing on the way out that pays? I mean, rarely ever.
It's very little. And so although we haven't done total customer counts on this, it could be as high as 1 in 4 vehicles is a smaller vehicle that could just maybe avoid the scales. So this could really help to streamline things.
Yeah.
We'll also be looking at the best location for another area to load transfer trailers. This could be an expansion of the existing building or the construction of a completely new building. We'll have to just evaluate that and see the best way to do it. It may be that separating commercial from the public could be the best way to go, and then that wouldn't impact operations as much in the event that we do go under construction to enhance the Ramsey Transfer Station facility. But that does need to happen, just looking at all the growth and the amount of tonnage that's coming through the site. Any questions on Ramsey? So the Fighting Creek landfill, I'll move on to that. That's number 2 in the business item agenda. So operations, I did want to let you know that garbage volumes are obviously picking up. It's springtime. We're currently building a 10-foot lift, so that's the size of the area that they're laying the garbage in, and that causes us to move rather quickly and causes some difficulties in operation. We do have gas lines to put in on that lift, and I do want to touch on gas system improvements a little later. The managers, I currently have them working on putting together some plans on how to construct the landfill this season, including lift sequencing, so the areas that we build with garbage, road extensions, grades, stormwater control, and also that landfill gas system expansion. So as you know, this winter we've had some odor problems at Fighting Creek, and we've been taking those extremely seriously. So we've been looking at some ways to increase efficiencies in the gas collection system and ways to avoid problems in the future. So we have a number of gas system improvements planned. This year we will be installing a new buried 12-inch main vacuum line across phase E2 of the landfill from the north to the south. This line should greatly help with available vacuum on the north end of the east cell and enhance future gas collection capability. So make sure that we have the available vacuum or pipe volume to get that gas out so that we don't have odor problems in the future. So that will help alleviate some of that. We also plan to install several new gas collection lines in trenches within the garbage this year across phases E1 and E2. That will occur over the next several months. So we'll actually trench those in and put gas collection lines in to try to draw gas off that top surface of the landfill, hopefully capturing some of that gas that's in the upper levels. These lines will allow us to capture gas in a more efficient manner. Also, gas system maintenance is important. This year we'll be digging up some main gas valves and cleaning out any accumulated debris. We found that underground we've accumulated from contractors working on the sites and also our environmental technicians, sometimes pipe shaving. So the plastic pipe that we use can get sucked down the pipe and then accumulate on valves at certain points. And so sometimes that can decrease your vacuum. So I'm gonna have the guys go ahead and dig up some of those valves. In fact, they're digging one up today to try to make sure we have the maximum available vacuum so that we can, again, have better collection of the gas. Any questions about the gas system upgrades? Okay. So the 40 by 60 storage building, you know that was a project. We put that out to bid. Only one contractor bid on that project. It came in really expensive. So we actually talked to that contractor about ways to reduce the price of the building for future bids. And he had some suggestions because sometimes engineers get a little rambunctious and overzealous in the things that they design. And so we had some talks. So I believe that we could downgrade some things in that building, change some of the specifications. They would still, of course, meet all the codes, right, but maybe ways to reduce the price. And then we'll probably go after that again in fiscal year 23. We'll likely bid that, but may be able to, some of the doors were a little custom in size. We might be able to go to more standard stuff and reduce the price for the taxpayers.
Sure. And then with that, just waiting another year though, I mean, supply chains, we just might, what happens if it never gets built?
I hope never isn't the word. I hope but if it was delayed by 2 or 3 years, I think we'd be okay with that. Okay. So if the next year it looks really expensive and it looks like a waste of time to bid it, we'll wait another year. Okay. So, but I do think eventually we're going to need some kind of storage building. And I don't really want to reduce it totally to a pole barn, but that could be the route that we should go and just change what we intended to store in that building. So and that could be a way to decrease the price quite a bit. So with that, I'm going to move on to the South Cell landfill permitting process. So recently, Jacobs Engineering, so I guess I should back up. So as you know, I've been working on trying to incorporate some property that was acquired after the initial purchase of the property at Fighting Creek. That was never incorporated into the landfill plan, although it's been planned to be used for landfill. So we want to finalize that area of property and get it wrapped in and get it permitted for landfill use. However, recently Jacobs Engineering recommended that we finalize an existing right-of-way issue at the Fighting Creek landfill with South Cell permitting. So this right-of-way exists on the eastern portion of our property along Highway 95, specifically across from the Rockford Bay Road, and then travels north paralleling the highway. This was planned as a frontage road for potential subdivisions in the future in that area. Currently, we have a wetlands pond that we constructed in the same area that would be extremely difficult to move. The Highway District recognizes this issue, and so we've been working on coming up with a remedy. Verbally, we have a solution. However, we have to work with the state of Idaho also because it's an access that comes off of Highway 95. So that creates some more difficulty. So I've been working with Kevin Howard from Worley Highway District on this issue. We have a meeting set for this Monday, April 11th, to physically take a look at the issues and possible solutions. And once we come up with a good plan, which I believe we already have, but we're gonna physically walk the site, then Kevin would take that before the state and try to get their buy-in so that we could finalize this issue. We don't want it to bite us at the time that we're trying to permit that south area, so we want to try to wrap that up before moving forward. Any questions about any of that? No. So transfer station, moving on to number 3, spring has sprung and waste volumes, of course, are also picking up at the transfer stations. We are putting an emphasis on safety, and we'll have written instructions available to give new customers using our commercial unloading areas. We're going to give them some new instructions that better state or more clearly state how to avoid equipment incidents out there and make sure you're out of the way for safe operation at the transfer stations. And I'd like to give kudos to a couple of our employees that suggested this change. We do believe it's a good idea, and we're listening to them and taking their input to try to streamline the process and make it a safer facility. We also intend to have marked areas designated for certain vehicles to drop their dump boxes. So a lot of times contractors or homeowners will come with a large dump bed trailer, and the box drops extremely slowly. So in the past, a lot of times they stay right in that commercial unloading area waiting for that box to drop even though it's empty. What we want them to do is pull out of the way and drop in an area where we have green or yellow lines painted on the ground that say drop box here, so that they're out of the way so they won't get hit by equipment, and then other customers can pull in and out, because we are getting pretty busy back there. So just a reminder, April through June are extremely busy months at the transfer stations. We do whatever we can to streamline processes for all our customers in a safe and as efficient manner as possible, but customers can expect sometimes longer than normal waiting times this time of year. The landfill, just to put it in perspective, has been experiencing days where 800 to 900 tons a day is coming to the landfill. That's for both transfer stations. So the transfer stations are seeing 400 to 500 tons a day per transfer station coming in. So extremely high volumes of waste this time of year. People are cleaning their yards, just garbage that's accumulated over the winter. They're bringing it in or buying new furniture.
How are we doing with Washington?
We're still working on that. So recently, Ange and I have been talking about sending letters out to a couple of contractors we believe that may be abusing the system. It's difficult to definitely know they're doing that, but we do get reports from time to time on vehicles coming down I-90 heading for the transfer station.
Basically, we're watching you.
Yeah, we watch them. We do have a sheet that customers or commercial entities, we require them to fill out if we suspect that the work may be coming from Washington, that it's basically an affidavit that says, you know, I swear that this material is coming from this address and this is where the work, and then Kootenai County Solid Waste reserves the right to go audit that site, just to drive by, take a look, and make sure that there's an actual job going on.
And to reject any load that somebody brings in.
If we would like to be able to do that.
I would like that.
Yeah, we just have to be sure that,
I know.
you know, that they're
Like a lot
not
of things, you gotta
telling
be
the truth.
with knowing what you're doing.
Yeah. And if we do catch them dumping from out of state, we would have that option, of course, to limit their use of the site, so. Any questions on the transfer stations? Okay. So moving on to rural sites, as you know, last summer, the Solid Waste Department received several complaints about garbage out the ground on numerous sites. This past fall and winter, the problem has really been minimized. Big thanks to the Sheriff's Office for continuing their policing at these rural collection sites. I think that's really made a big difference. However, here we come, we're coming back into the busy season. Typically, we see the worst abuse of these sites coming up from May through September. Usually the last week of May is when it really kicks off. So we're anticipating that our signage, as well as help from the Sheriff's Office, will continue to minimize these issues, but we're gonna try to stay on top of it, and we'll make changes as necessary if we see those sites starting to be abused. The neighbors in the area have really been helping with policing. They've been sending us some emails that we forward to the Sheriff's Office with pictures and information about people abusing the sites. So we'll stay on top of that and try to avoid those issues. Also, I have full intentions of putting out additional containers on the holidays from our own department, knowing that specifically Labor Day and Memorial Day weekends, it seems like abuse definitely occurs at a couple of those sites. So we'll put out extra containers to try to make sure that garbage doesn't accumulate on the ground. So with that, the Solid Waste Department also, I want to let you know we're still working on cameras for 3 of the south sites. So the Sunup Bay, Kidd Island, and Worley site. These cameras will be intended to monitor the sites and give the sheriff's department direct 24-hour access where they could see the video feeds from those sites. We've been waiting on this project just because the company that we want to have install these cameras recently installed cameras at the landfill, and we wanted to make sure those were all up and running and that it looked good before we proceeded with the rural sites, but I still intend to get those done before the end of the budget. So we're working on that. With that, we'll move on to number 5, 2021 solid waste statistics, and Angela will take over.
Good morning, Commissioners. Angela Bergeson for the record. In March, I finished the 2021 waste analysis report. This report goes to DEQ and Panhandle Health. So all of the statistics for waste, customer count of all of our sites, everything that went to the landfill, waste that was diverted to recycling. So all those numbers are in here, and when I'm finished, I will give you copies. So just go over a few of the stats. So in 2021, we had 252,470 tons of waste managed in the county. We had 808,744 customer visits. That's with the 2 rural sites that are staffed, as well as Ramsey and Prairie, and then also a few out at the landfill as well, now that we have the scale out there. Out of all of that tonnage, we landfilled 211,433 tons, which means we diverted 41,037 tons out of the landfill. So it didn't go there. That went to recycling. That was wood that was chipped and recycled as well. 2020, as we know, was huge. We had a big increase. 2021, same thing. Not as high, but it continued the growth. We didn't see a downturn after 2020. So for waste tons managed, we had an increase of 6.4% over 2020's numbers.
Wow.
Customers, however, so this counts the transfer stations and the staffed sites. This does not, of course, count the rural sites that aren't staffed because we have no idea about the customer counts there. But we saw a decrease in customer count by 1.4% over what we saw of 2020. So it did go down a little bit. Kind of a summary of that, looking at those numbers. So we had larger loads and less customer. Let's see, our biggest decrease was in our 2 staffed rural sites, Athol and Chilco. They actually saw a decrease in customer count of 7%. But of course, we saw an increase at our unstaffed rural sites. Let's see, for recycling, just to touch base on that, recycling is going well. We have a market for it again. We haven't seen that since 2017.
What kind of materials?
That we're getting the most on, of course, aluminum, cardboard, newspaper, and metal. Metal went up a lot. So that increased.
Is there any market for plastics or no?
There is not. There is not. That is one, of course, we take it, it does get recycled, but we pay out for plastic.
To take it away. How about, and glass is still a bad one?
And glass, it's inert, so it does go into the landfill. The city takes it, though. They have a project that they are doing with it. So there are 2 collection sites that the city
Just
does.
a quick question. I have a friend who owns a site in private, and they take refrigerators, small motorcycles, and they just throw it into this thing and it just eats them. It's like this. And then they separate out the usables from the non-usables. And it's a private industry, and he makes a pretty healthy living doing that.
Sure.
Is there anything that we can do like that?
So right now, refrigerators are one of it does get counted in the metal. So refrigerators
But I mean,
are.
this is just a wonder to watch this thing work.
Yeah, so they do make shredders. It's probably what the machine is.
Yeah, it's a shredder.
And right now, we have a contract with a metal recycling, so is it American?
American.
American Recycling out of Spokane. So they contract to take all of our metals and they pay us for the metal. They're doing the processing of the metal at their site, but it's loaded into.
Just looking for
trailers.
nickels that we can,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
The tough part with some of that is the space. To have
Yeah.
the space to process it on site and the manpower.
and they've got
all of-
they've got a big space. That's why it's not in Portland. It's between Portland and Salem.
Okay.
Nice.
Yep.
So cardboard, we had an increase, 25%.
Wow.
So
Amazon boxes.
Amazon boxes, moving boxes, and at Athol and Chilco, we have big recycling bins for cardboard at those two sites, especially since it's staffed. We can do that and make sure that there isn't garbage and other things going into it, so we can do a cardboard recycling at the staffed rural sites. Wood. Wood was big. Of course, in January of 2021, we had a windstorm. It was a FEMA event. So we had an increase of 8.3%. So 19,004 tons of wood. A decrease. We had a decrease in tires and a decrease in metals. Tires, though, that's a tough one because we measure it not necessarily on when they come in, because a lot of times people are bringing tires along with other waste. But we measure it by when it goes out to our tire recyclers. The tough part is that they had a hard time keeping up with the tires that we had. So a lot of it did remain on site more than we like. We did have to switch haulers.
So I have this picture and my husband said it's really hard to cut a tire in half, but for chicken nests, there was this whole wall just full of half tires and chickens in them. I thought, well, shoot, advertise that. Come get our tires and make chicken houses out of them.
There are uses. There are definitely uses. So we did have a decrease in tires for 2021. We'll likely see a substantial increase for 22 now that we're able to keep up on the demand. We'll see a lot more moving out. Metal, as we know, the price of metal went up a lot. So we are able to sell off the metal that we get, but I think others are getting savvy to that too, and they're taking it elsewhere, which makes sense. So that's why metal is down. It's not that it isn't happening, aren't necessarily disposing of it with us. But yeah, that's the general overview. But plenty of stats and things for you, charts, all kinds of goodies for you to look at for 21.
Construction demolition waste, do you still see that pretty steady?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if, Angela, do you have specific numbers on construction demolition? It's pretty hard to separate because it comes in mixed
Right.
with everything. But it's, just obvious when you look at our piles that you can see a really high percentage of our waste is construction demolition.
Well, I'm always told that that's the first place we see the downturn is when your demolition waste starts to wane. So I was hoping.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, I'm seeing also the larger loads compared to our customer count. So customer count's smaller a little bit. It's marginal decrease in that, but still the higher tonnage just keeps growing, and a big part of that is that construction and demolition.
Okay.
I do want to say before we finish up here that Angela did an excellent job on these. This is her first year putting this together in her position, and it came out great, and I do want to thank her for that. And then she's in the middle of budgets, which is a whole nother mess of work. So, and she's doing an excellent job on the budgets also. So kudos to Angela and our
very
department.
good.
Thank
And
you.
he's a very picky person.
It can be. No.
Well, good.
And Angela's great to work with. So things are looking up in our department. I think we're doing good. So
Good.
any other questions about what's going on in the solid waste departments? We appreciate your time, and that would conclude what we have to bring to this meeting.
All right. Sounds good. I'll call for a public comment, but there's probably nobody on. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. And it's 11:27 and this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Our
Are there Girl Scout cookie stands at the transfer stations?
Wish.
You know what? Am I on the record? The kids,